In this video, we're talking about estimating addition. So you're standing in the store and you want to know approximately how much something's going to cost. Or you're very early on in a project and you're trying to figure out approximately how much of a certain material you're going to need. So we're not finding exact answers, we're just finding approximate answers. And there's not a hard and fast rule for this. So there are lots of different appropriate approximations. The key is to make the estimate reasonable. And this will totally depend on the situation, on the numbers given, and on why you want to know, right? How accurate do you want that estimation to be? And that's going to be dependent on the situation. Now, one thing you need to pay attention to is things like a $150 textbook. So a $150 textbook, that's a pretty expensive book. That's really important if you're talking about going to the bookstore and buying a textbook and some pencils and folders. But that $150 textbook isn't that important when you're buying it at the same time as a $10,000 car and a $120,000 house. So putting those three numbers together, that like so 150 is kind of insignificant. In some ways, you could even just ignore it. Right? If you're going to the bookstore, that 150 is really driving the cost of your bill. So it's a very, very important part. But if you're talking about a textbook versus a car and house, then it's not so important. So the context is very important, and making your estimates reasonable is the goal. So let's do a shopping example. So you're going to paint a room. So you need to buy 4 cans of paint. They each cost $54.95. Kind of expensive paint. A step ladder that costs $126.35, and a new roller for $7. And you want to approximate how much this is going to cost. So pause this video and come up with an estimate. So something quick, something fairly fast, something that doesn't take too long and doesn't require a calculator, doesn't require a lot of writing. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of strategies. So one strategy is to round each number first and then add them together. There are lots and lots of ways to do this. One possibility, maybe you take the paint and you say, well, that's about $55. Not much of a round there, so that's 55 plus 55 plus 55 plus 55. The step ladder is $126.35, so let's say that's $126, and the roller is $7. Okay, now, we made those numbers a little easier, but they're still kind of bulky if we're going to just try to do this in our head quickly or do this with very little writing. So maybe we want to round to something like, well, the paint cans are $50. Okay, 50s are much easier for us to work with. The step ladder, let's say it's $125 and the roller is $5. So now we're rounding to 10s and 5s. Might be a little bit easier for us to do in our head or quickly. This one would be fairly quick. 50 plus 50 is 100. 50 plus 50 is 100. So there's 100, 200, 300 from here, and then 30. So there's your 330. So a little bit quicker doing the addition than that first rounding. Or maybe we round everything to 10. So now we have 50s for the paint, 130 for the step ladder, and maybe we decide that's $7 for the roller, not a big deal. So maybe we just round that to 0. Or any combination of these, right? So here we have the paint at 55, the step ladder at 130, and the roller at 10. That's fine, that works. Right below that, maybe we round the paint up to 60, and we round the step ladder down and the roller down. So the step ladder becomes 120 and the roller becomes 0. All of these are perfectly acceptable estimates for how much all of this stuff is going to cost. What's going to be important if you're going to use this strategy is rounding it to numbers that are reasonable. In other words, they're close enough to the original number and are easy enough for you to work with quickly and easily. Now, another strategy is to look for groupings that give you approximately a nice round number. So If we look at all of the prices, so notice I haven't rounded them yet. I have my 4 cans of paint, my stepladder, and my roller all written out. And now what I can do is I can start to look for groupings, and I can say, oh, well, if I put these two together, that's about $100 or $110. These two together, that's about $100 or about $110. Then I can group these two together, that's about $130. Maybe 135, but about, right? We're sort of rounding as we group. So we're grouping them together and saying, oh, well, these two together give me approximately a nice number. And sometimes you're going to want to group 3 or 4 numbers together, and sometimes they're not going to land so nicely next to each other as you write them out. But looking for those numbers that group together that make approximately a nice number is another good strategy. So here we grouped the first ones to get 100 or 110, the next to 100, 110, here 130 or 135. So now my addition becomes much easier. If I have 100 plus 100, that's 200, plus 130, that's 300, 330. Okay. Or if I use some combination of those, depending on how you rounded it, you're getting 330, 350, 355, all of those numbers and any number close to those, they're in the ballpark, right? They're a good approximation of how much you're going to have to pay if you're going to buy the paint, the ladder, and the roller. So in summary, the addition should be much, 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 much easier when you're estimating. That's the point of estimating. Right? We're not going to take every cent, every dollar, every place value into account. We're just going to get approximately how much it's going to be. Hopefully, it should be so easy that you can do it in your head. Or sometimes that's not realistic. Fairly quickly, just using your fingers. Or maybe you have to write a little bit down. If there are a lot of things that you're adding together, you might want to do just some little notes to figure out or to help keep track of all those little pieces. Now, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here. On the assignment itself, I would like you to write some more down. And that is not because you need to write it down, but I want to follow what you're doing. I want to understand your process to make sure that I can follow what you're doing and try to catch any mistakes that you might have. So on your homework, I want you to write down more than you would if you were standing in a store or around a table trying to figure out whether or not this was a good project for you.